Hey guys, it's Drew. Thank you for checking out the Sober Fix podcast, where we talk about addiction and living life sober, one day at a time. If you like what you hear, go ahead and follow us. And if you get some time, check out our Instagram page at the Sober Fix podcast, and also our YouTube and TikTok at the Sober Fix. Hope you enjoy the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Sober Fix podcast. I am sorry, last week I did not make an episode. Probably the first week in the last year that I did not make an episode. I was moving. It was pretty chaotic. But I'm excited today. I've got a friend on. We got Mark Kneebone, and he is from the Steel City Roundtable podcast. Super excited that he's here. He's got a really cool story. Me and him have been going back and forth on audio stuff and kind of technical stuff and running a podcast because he's got a host, but he does most of it all himself. And it's crazy trying to do it ourselves. But Mark, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Listen, man, I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I want to kind of start in the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
I am from Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is on the east coast of Pennsylvania towards like Philadelphia, New Jersey. We moved around a lot. I come from mixed families. There's 2 divorces in my family by the time I was 17. So I have like multiple sets of step parents and step siblings. And, it wasn't a bad upbringing in that my parents didn't love me. It was a rough upbringing because, I believe that my mother was bipolar, undiagnosed. And she was very difficult to live with, manipulative, controlling, and there's just a lot of really bad dynamics in the family because you got stepkids living together that don't like each other, and you got parents that are always fighting. So, it was rough growing up. It was rough. But everybody has a rough time growing up these days.
Yeah, and what age did you discover alcohol, or were you mainly alcohol?
Yeah. I was an alcoholic hardcore, 3 decades. I was 17. I had switched schools because I got kicked out of public school for fighting. I accidentally hit a teacher. Whoops. And then the girl I was dating was a drinker and a weed smoker. And, I, like most alcoholics, I didn't fit in growing up. I had a lot of issues personality wise, like because of the stuff I was dealing with at home. I had a very hard time connecting with other people. So she gave me a beer one day and I was like, oh, okay. I feel pretty good. And that was it. Literally, I don't think I've been sober for more than a couple months since then.
Yeah, I remember I also started drinking around 17, which is late for some people. I hear people talking about drinking way earlier, but I remember it. Like, I don't remember my first apple juice, orange juice. I remember my first drink. It did something for me that would essentially change the rest of my life. I didn't know it at the time. Did you start drinking right away, or was that just you started and then started again later?
No, I started drinking, like I said, 17. I had my first drink. It was literally after that, it was like every weekend, back then it was like Crazy Horse, Old English 800, like all the 40-ounce malt liquor, Blue Bull Schlitz, amazing stuff. We would drink every weekend, and then it was like come out to the car during lunch break and, rip 40 down between like 4 of us and keep a buzz on all day long. And then, that continued until I graduated when I was, at the end of that year. So I graduated at 17, and then I went to college. I went to Slippery Rock University of Pennsylvania, and, immediately joined a fraternity. So, the college culture was drinking. It was like, drinking in sports. I played soccer, and I became part of this fraternity. So like, the more I drank, the more my personality came out, right? Like, so I stopped being shy. I was like a party animal, like getting drunk, having a great time. So it was steady on from that time until, May of 2023. Sometimes stronger than others. Sometimes I drank less, like I didn't always drink like I did at the end, but I always drank, and it was always pretty steady throughout my life.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I was typically shy as well. And I noticed when I started to drink, it's like all of a sudden I was an open book, and I talked to whoever. It just felt like it was magic in the beginning. When did you get involved with law enforcement?
I was 33 years old. I had just moved back so I moved around a lot, uh, and I'd moved to Eastern PA and was engaged, and that fell through. And then I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I was sleeping on couches. Uh, I was, working for a living, working 3 jobs. I had money to get my own place, but I had moved so many times. I was like, I'm not going to get an apartment. I'm just going to be ready to fly again and grab my shit and go. So I'm sleeping on couches. And one of my buddies was a cop in the city I was living in. And he's like, dude, they're hiring. And this was in 2007. And he's like, I think you'd be good at law enforcement. I'm like, bro, I'm sleeping on a couch right now. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, dude, you can't hold down a job. You tell everybody what to do. I mean, this is the only thing that'll work for you. And I'm like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. So I applied at 33 years old.
Wow, you ended up getting it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I told a lot of lies. Um, that lie detector was on fire when I got done. But, honestly, he was right, though. Like I had messed around with drugs growing up. I drank a lot. I'd been around domestic, not violent, but domestic, the verbal domestic stuff. I'd made a lot of mistakes in my life. So, like, why not take the next step and use what I learned in my life to try to help other people? And I think that's when I really started to want to do something good with my life and stop being a knucklehead, you know? And that's it. And I did that until 2019, so 12 years.
Wow. And what was your drinking like throughout that process while you were in law enforcement?
So this is a whole episode in itself. Um, the culture of law enforcement is heavy into drinking, first responders in general. And my drinking ramped up when I became a cop because our way of winding down was, get done at 7 o'clock in the morning. There's a couple bars open in Pittsburgh. You'd run down to the bar with your friends. You'd get drunk and you'd go home and go to sleep. You'd sit and bullshit, talk about all the stuff that went on that night or whatever's on your mind, and, clean the slate for the next day and went home and, passed out and got up 8 hours later and went back to work. So, it became more of a pattern, in that, like, I spent more and more time at the bars with my friends drinking after work than I probably ever had before that.
Yeah, and do you think the stress of the job, because I imagine that's got to be a stressful job, being a first responder of any kind. Do you think that added to it? Was it like, man, I kind of need the alcohol to decompress from all the stuff I've been seeing at work?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, if there's a law enforcement officer out there that tells you that they don't have PTSD, they're probably lying to you. I think it's almost impossible not to have PTSD if you're a first responder, because no matter what, you're seeing bad shit. Whether you're a fireman, paramedic, cop, whatever, you're seeing bad shit. And as a cop, you're showing up when people are at their lowest point, when they need help. And then, you got to take that stuff home with you. So, you see people, I've seen people shot 27 times. I had 3 of my friends were murdered on the job in 2009. Um, you know, there was a flood here that took lives. I think it was 4 lives in 2010. I was part of that rescue. And so, this stuff builds. And being a type A personality, which most cops are going to be, well, at least they used to be. Now they're a bunch of sissies, but, type A personalities don't reach out for help. We feel that we can do it on our own, so I think my drinking specifically got a lot worse because of what I was dealing with mentally, and the fact that I was incapable of resolving any of the trauma that I had, any of the issues that I had, which I didn't think was trauma back then. But, after getting sober, like, there's a lot of things that happened that really screwed me up, mentally, that I never dealt with. And I just pushed to the side. So, you know, it's tough, man. It's really tough for cops and first responders to do that job and to come home and try to live the semblance of a normal life. So doing the bar thing after work is probably one of the only ways that they get shit off their chest.
Yeah. And how do you deal with that depression and PTSD today?
Well, now that I know I have it, which is awesome because I got diagnosed with it when I was in treatment in 2023. Um, for me, it's a lot of different things. It's a combination of medication, which I think is a great tool, not a fix it, but a great tool if you use it properly and it's properly prescribed for what you're dealing with. I meditate. I go to the gym. I try to eat healthy. I do the podcast, which is amazing. Just getting on there and talking about whatever's bothering me that day is huge in helping me relieve a lot of my stress. Um, I still have really bad days, but it's not like when I was drinking because now, like, my bad day sober is better than my best day drunk. And I have a great support network, which is huge. Turn into friends, turn into the people that I trust when I have a bad day to try to get through it. And knowing that I don't have to have a bad day if I don't want to, like I can work through it, so it's a lot of coping mechanisms, some that I learned in treatment and some that I just ignored for a really long time. Uh, but I think the support network is probably the biggest thing, is just knowing that I have people that love me for who I am, no matter how screwed up I can be and how much of a dick I can be. They still love me and still are there to listen when I need somebody else to give me a helping hand when I just can't get motivated.
Yeah, man. And I love all the stuff that you mentioned that's helping you today with the working out and the just everything. I wanted to ask you about the fellow officer situation. Can you just kind of tell me what happened there?
Yeah. So, April 4th of 2009, um, I just got done working. I had worked a double shift and I got off. It was, the morning shift, like 6:30 in the morning. I think it was 6:30, 6:40, something like that. And then, I went home and went to bed. And during that time frame, uh, there was a call for a domestic, and, uh, one of the guys that I went to the academy with, uh, Steve Maley, Paul Schuler and Eric Kelly, the other two officers. Um, Paul Schuler responded to the call, and, you know, not being there and not knowing all the facts, but just knowing what's been put out afterwards, he went to the door and it was a call from the mother saying that the son was being out of control and she needed somebody to control him. And they knocked on the door. Paul knocked on the door. The mother opened the door, stepped aside, and the son shot Paul. And then executed him by shooting him in the head. And Steve Maley, who, like I said, I went to the academy with, was one of my friends. I knew him better than the others, but I knew them all because we worked together in the same zone. Steve showed up and same kind of thing. He got hit. He pressed the fight to the bad guy, continued moving into the house, trying to address the threat. He got put down. And then another officer, Eric Kelly, showed up off duty. He was coming home from working what they called a secondary employment detail, where he was working security at like a bar or a restaurant, something for the city, and he heard the call and he lived right around the corner. He showed up and he got ripped into multiple times exiting his vehicle, and he ended up dying on the scene as well. So we lost 3 officers in the same night to the same guy.
Jeez, dude, that is brutal.
Yeah, it's I didn't know how profoundly it affected me. Because like I said, I think I got off like 45 minutes to an hour before the incident happened. And they were, sorry, man, it still chokes me up a little bit, talking about it. I had a lot of survivor's guilt because I got off just prior to that call being put out. If I would have been on a different shift in working instead of going home, there's a strong chance that I could have been on that call as backup or as a responding officer. So I was unable to deal with any of it. And my drinking went off the rails, and, my wife at the time wasn't super supportive about it, wasn't really there for me to talk to, but I also wasn't volunteering information. So I really struggled, really, really struggled with that. And I didn't really realize until I went to treatment how much that it affected me and how torn inside I was and how much rehab I need to do mentally to try to get myself right.
Yeah, man. Thank you for talking about that. I know that can't be easy. I want to kind of go into rehab. How did you know you're ready for rehab? Was there a point where you realized, okay, I've got to do something about this?
Yeah, I almost shot myself in the head. It was a pretty good sign. I think it
Oh,
said there's something that
geez.
had to change. Yeah, yeah. I was on a binge, um, another one. Listen, bro, it was so bad. I had like pint bottles taped on the inside of my engine. I had like bottles all over my car, hidden everywhere. I went to the gym with a roadie with like 20 ounces of vodka and like Jack 3D pre-workout in it. I drank everywhere. I pre-gamed to go to the gas station. I pre-gamed to go to the store. Like I drank all day on my days off for like 2 days straight. Didn't stop. Uh, and I would come home and I would drink like every night. I would drink like a half gallon of booze in like 2 hours before I went to bed just to keep myself right. Um,
Just to make it through the night.
just to get through, man. Like because I never really had withdrawals, quote unquote, but like my anxiety would shoot through the roof, and I wouldn't be able to function. Like I would drink. I would come home like I think at the time I was working like 7 in the morning, so I get home at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. I'd hit the gas station, get a couple pounders, drink those on the half-hour ride home. Then I would get home. I would rip into a half gallon of vodka or whiskey or whatever I had, uh, and I had it down that I needed like 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep in order to function the next day. Um, so yeah, I was a machine. It was just routine. Like I drank every chance I got and all the time. And you know, law enforcement, I don't know how to get myself killed. Being hungover all the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Was it just brutal waking up the next day or were you so used to it?
It was, so going back a little bit, as a cop, I never drank on the job. I never drank before work. I never drank on the job, but I got drunk every night before. So I was never 100%. And I spent 9.5 years in patrol and 3 years in narcotics and vice as a detective, plainclothes detective. Um, and it got so bad at one point in like 2017. Um, my partner was like, "You need to do something. I can't work with you." Like, really? Like, wake up call. So I tried to get sober in 2017, and that failed miserably. And then in 2023, it was like May 1st, I believe. It was May 1st or May 2nd. I really don't remember a whole lot because, it was like little Fallujah in my apartment. There was, bottles everywhere and garbage on the floor and clothes everywhere. And I was just like ripping drinks for 2 days straight. I think I had like 40 White Claw Surge cans on the ground. Like it is ridiculous. Um, and in my drunken stupor, I went to my safe and pulled out my off-duty firearm and chambered around and sat there on the couch with it sitting in my lap, contemplating ending it because I couldn't take it anymore. I was just so tired. I was so broken inside. Like I just couldn't function anymore. Like I couldn't even think straight. Uh, and luckily enough, I passed out. So somebody was looking out for me. But yeah, it came down to that moment where I was like, listen, I've been at this road so many times and I've always taken this path of, well, I'll get cleaned up for a little bit and then I'll start drinking again. And at that point, I just realized I'm going to die if I keep drinking, whether it's by my own hand or something else. I'm not going to make it. So that was the moment. And I called some friends and, they were like, dude, go, we got you. And that was it. I think I was on a plane like a day and a half later.
Wow. I had that. I had the similar moment, but for my personal story after an overdose. And I remember the next day I went to the hospital and I ended up in rehab. And I remember thinking it was the first time that I realized, oh, this will actually kill me. Like it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just, oh, maybe, or because I always started drinking or using with this idea, kind of like you said, I'd get clean for a little bit and then things would improve and I'd go right back to it. And I always felt like I was in control, like, oh, I'll get sober again when I want to.
Well, we're indestructible, man. We're addicts and
Yeah.
alcoholics. We're indestructible, man. We don't die.
Yeah. I know. And that's it's what we think with, we're good. We'll figure it out. But
Yep.
and that's when I realized this is gonna kill me. Like it's not I can't just be around the bush with this. Like it's going to get me. I want to
But
ask
I
you
mean,
what was or go ahead.
but I mean, like, you're going to die from it. But how long was it before you're like, oh, I want to use again? Like the
Oh,
next
like
day.
2 days.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going to die. What? I'll have a good time, right? Like I'm going to die having a good time.
Yeah.
Insane. It's insane how logic and common sense goes out the window for an addiction. Like your life, and you know this as well as I do, your entire life revolves around getting that next drink, getting that next drug. It doesn't matter what you have to do. You will tear out your own liver if
Yep.
you want something that bad, and you'll destroy everything around you. So it's like we can overdose, and we can have those life-changing moments, but the percentage chance of us surviving and staying sober or clean is so low
Oh
because
yeah.
the rate of us giving in again is so high. It's just like, it's crazy how your brain just says, you know what, I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to let my body tell me what to do now because it knows what it's doing. It's been doing this for 20 years. Like, it's good. We're good. We're going to be okay. And it's not even close.
Yeah, it's we're gonna be okay. It's that narrative going on. It was always going on in my head. We'll figure this out. We'll worry about it
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Like I'm strong. I can figure this out. I don't need anybody. I don't need any help. I'm good.
Yeah. So what was rehab like when you got there?
Um, my rehab was kind of awesome. It's kind of a good story. Uh, I got on a plane, I think around noon from Pittsburgh, and I was going down to Delray Beach, Florida. I drank the entire day. I mean, I got loaded going down there. I probably spent like $600 at the fucking airports. Um, and then I was on the plane and sitting all the way in the back row. Like I was like, I need to get in the back and I need to get some more booze. So I'm ordering like, you know, 2 Jack and Diets the same, and just keep them coming. Don't stop. And it was funny because the plane had like a 3-hour delay. So they were like, all the drinks are on us. And I was
Oh
like, okay.
wow.
I'm like, cool. So I start reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous while I'm sitting there with like backed up Jack Daniels and Diet Cokes getting hammered. And I'm like, I might as well get started, right? Like this is what I'm in for. So I'm gonna start looking at the book, right? I get to Delray Beach. I get to West Palm Airport and I get picked up by, they pick you up in a van or a car and they drive you to the rehab facility. And this one was in Jupiter, Florida. And I got there and I was like, there is no way I'm staying here. It was a disaster. Like it's like 11:30 at night. People are just wandering around like a bunch of zombies. There's like no rules. And I look at the lady, I'm like, listen, I'm not staying here. And she's like, you can either go to a hotel for the night or you can stay here tonight. And I'm like, well, if I go to a hotel, you know what's going to happen. I'm going to fucking get really, really drunk and then jump on a plane and go home tomorrow. So I stayed the night and I decided that night that I wasn't going to get treated there. So I went through detox there for 7 days and then caught a van down to another treatment center down in Delray Beach, which recently closed. It was called Transformations Treatment Center. And I got there and 100%, if it wasn't for the folks there, they saved my life 100%. They absolutely saved my life. We can get to go into deep as that as you want, but yeah, treatment was, it was different than any other treatment center that I had heard of in that, most treatment centers you think of are like sterile white walls, all day AA, strict and regimented and do this and do that and walk the line or we're going to kick you out. This place had a residential facility and then a campus, and they were a mile apart. So you would stay at the residential and then they would pick you up in the morning and would take you over to the building. You'd do your clinical for like 3-4 hours. They'd drive you back for lunch and then you would come back in the afternoon and do like another 3-4 hours of clinical. And then they had some really good therapies there that, basically, like I said, saved my life, like neurotherapy and EMDR and ART and all these things that they did that helped figure this thing out. So it was good. It was really good. I'm really sad that they closed the doors because they were doing really good work there. But after all, it is a business. So, nobody's doing it for free.
Yeah. Why did they close the doors? Do you know? Or
They had they called it the VAFR program. It was Veterans and First Responders. So I went in as former law enforcement. So the VA donates a ton of money. The Veterans Association donates a ton of money to this place. And basically they covered my treatment. And they paid for veterans and first responders to get treated and get healthy. So what I hear, and this is all secondhand, is that they were having less and less first responders and veterans come to the hospital, to the treatment center. So they were getting less and less money from the government. And I think this place was pretty much backed and funded by the VA. I think that's how they kept their doors open, because I'm not even going to tell you how much it cost, but we're talking six figures, you know,
Wow.
to go to treatment down there. But I mean, like I said, they were giving you all kinds of therapies, like neurotherapy, which I don't know if you know what that is, and a bunch of different things that, you can't even get that stuff in Pennsylvania with insurance. And I was getting it up there, 5 days a week for free.
Wow. What was
Yeah.
the counseling like over there, or for you? Did you like counseling?
Um, yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I had to find a counselor that I could relate to. And when you're in treatment, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to find somebody that you relate to, because they're all there because um, they want to be, you know, uh, and they get paid for it. So
Yeah.
they're doing their job. It's not like they choose to be your buddy. Um, I don't know why that keeps doing that, but
I
that's kind
saw
of
it
funny.
pop
The
up too. It's kind
thumbs
of
up keeps
cool.
popping up. I guess,
It likes what you're saying.
I guess it likes what I'm saying. My computer thinks I'm cool. Um, where we were therapy. So I had a primary counselor there. Her name was Teresa. She was pretty cool. She was former law enforcement. She was clinical, like a clinical therapist. Like, how's that make you feel? What are your feelings? How do you feel about that? And I'm like, this is not going to work.
Oh, really?
So I asked for a secondary therapist, and I got with this guy Tyler. Um, and Tyler was a stormtrooper. He was a straight assassin. Uh, this dude broke me down into so many pieces that I didn't even know who I was anymore, which was what I needed. You know, um, give you an example. He would ask you a question, and you would give him the answer you think he wants, and then he'd look at you and be like, "That's bullshit. Now tell me what you're really feeling." And I'm like, "Well, fuck you. I'm done. I'm not talking anymore." And he would just stand like 3 feet in front of you and just keep needling at you until you gave him something. And then he would pull on that thread and unwind that ball of yarn. And the next thing you know, you're crying in the corner like a 4-year-old, and you're feeling so bad about yourself. And then you get up and you give him a hug and tell him how much you like him and thank you so much for helping me get through my shit. He literally tore me apart. Uh, I was in a family dynamics therapy session with him, and we started talking about my family and how kind of jacked up it is. And then it got into the stuff at the police department and law enforcement and the shooting and all that stuff. And next thing you know, I'm literally crying in the middle of the room. And he's like, "Do you want me to stop?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "We'll stop for now." And then I was like, I want that guy as my therapist, because he was able to get me to break down the wall and actually start saying something that was really, truly honest, and not just the shit that I was telling everybody else.
Yeah. And there must have been a lot of relief in that to finally go to that place where you could experience all those emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it was uncomfortable as hell, because, being a control freak, like we all are, to let your wall down and let somebody in, especially somebody you don't know, that's a pretty big step. But I honestly think that that's why it's, hey, that's why, admitting you're powerless against alcohol and your life is unmanageable. Like, you have to take that first step and give up control for a second, just for a second. You know, you give up control for a second, and that leads to another second, that leads to another second, that leads to another second. Next, you've got minutes, and then you've got hours, and then you've got days, and then you've got weeks, and then you've got years, you know? Um, so yeah, it's so cathartic to finally stop drowning yourself in your own shit, and finally letting somebody else look at it from the outside and say, you know what, you're not a piece of shit. You're just a sick person trying to get well. You know, you've made mistakes, but it's okay. And that was the biggest thing with Tyler, was he was so in my corner, uh, that I felt I could have told him anything and he still would have, you know, supported me. And that was important.
Yeah. So you guys had obviously built some trust. You felt comfortable talking to him.
Yeah. I mean, it's once that first session happened, the floodgates were open, and I was talking about everything. I was talking about like relationships and my divorce and, the shooting and the flood and, seeing people shot, and everything came out. Like, literally everything came out. And then that led to a whole bunch of other things that I had to deal with. So it wasn't like, you know how it goes. You start opening up. It's not like that just goes away once you're done talking about it. Like, it's still there. We still have to deal with it. Uh, so it made my recovery, it gave me some direction on what I needed to work on in order to stay sober. Uh, but it was by far the most important day of my life when I finally broke down and let him in.
That's when you started to heal. That was the start of all of it, you think?
I mean, I don't think I started to heal then. I think I started to get my mind in the right place where I could allow myself to try to heal.
Okay.
Because in my opinion, just because we go to rehab or just because we start talking about shit doesn't mean we're doing anything about it. We're just, it's like stubbing your toe off the table. Like, you did it, but what are you going to do about it? Like, you going to cry about it? You going to take some Advil? I mean, you still got to do something. You got to ice it. You got to take care of it. You got to look at it. You have to do the same with addiction and alcoholism. Just by talking about it, it doesn't mean that anything's going to get any better, because talking just allows you to prepare yourself to allow yourself to become healthy. You still have to work at it every day, every hour, every minute. That just is the gateway.
Dang, dude, that's so true. It's it took me a long time to realize that. I would go to rehab. I went multiple times. Sometimes the first couple I wasn't even ready to change. I just went because
Oh,
people
yeah.
were kind of forcing me.
Yeah, you think you're going there to learn how to do it the right way.
Yeah, people are going to show me how to
Awesome.
drink responsibly. People are going to show me how
Exactly.
to do
That's what I
this.
learned. That's what I learned.
And I thought that by going there, I would walk out of rehab or treatment healed. Like, I'm good. I went to rehab. And like you just talked about, I started to identify what was going on with me, but then I had to come up with a way to start treating it and start dealing with it. I want to ask you about the 12-step stuff. Did you start going to AA early on in your recovery, or how do you feel about AA?
One, I love AA. I think AA is amazing. I am not a diehard 12-stepper. I am not the guy that every time, I have a problem, I sit there and go, well, I'm gonna 9-step myself. I'm gonna 10-step myself. Like, I don't do that. But when I came home from treatment, I was not allowed to go back to work. So I was off for a month and a half on top of the 47 days I was gone. So I had a couple friends that were recovering alcoholics that were in AA, and I reached out to them as soon as I got home. And I mean, I was straight panic mode. Like, I was so scared. I was more scared coming home than I was going to treatment. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like so worried that everything I was going to do was going to trigger me back into drinking. So like, I think I was going to 3 and 4 meetings a day. I hit 100 meetings in the first 30 days. And that was it. Like, I was off to the races. Like, I was in it. Like, I was like talking and committing to the system and doing the steps, getting a sponsor, admitting every bad thing I've ever done in my lifetime, and really into the program to where it was my savior in the initial stages of my treatment and my recovery. Because I wasn't ready to go to my friends yet. I wasn't ready to like put my shit in their lap. So AA and the fellowship and the friends that I met there, and just the security blanket that it gave me, and also working on my shit, continuing to work on my stuff. It was AA. There's nothing better. I would say in the initial recovery, there's nothing better than a 12-step program, and opening your eyes and admitting that you're not in control.
Yeah, and was it hard for you to share in the meetings, to open up?
Initially, because you're in a room with a bunch of people that a lot of us, like, the first time we go to an AA meeting, we're like, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. That guy's fucked up. That guy's a total mess. This time I went, I was like, oh yeah, that guy's just like me. And that guy's just like me. And that guy's just like me. So I felt like I still felt like I was going to get judged a little bit, because I started off like, hey, my name's Mark. I'm an alcoholic. I was a cop for 12 years, and as soon as people hear cop, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's a fucking mess. He was a cop. He was protecting the streets, and now he's here. Like, what did he do as a cop? So I was worried about the judgment aspect of it. People sitting there and criticizing me for, one, being law enforcement, because it's really not the best time in the world now for law enforcement, because everybody hates them. But also being an alcoholic and a former cop. Like, that's not something a lot of people will admit in public. And a
Yeah.
lot of cops won't go to AA because of that. they don't want anybody to know who they are. And I guess I don't care anymore. So
Yeah, and that sucks because I mean, you could have any occupation, you could have any job and suffer from addiction and alcoholism. The disease or whatever you want to call it, the issue, the problem, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what your job is. And that sucks that people would feel that way. Oh, I can't go in there because I'm going to be judged,
yeah, I mean, you know as well as I do, when you step into rehab, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's cops, there's firemen, there's, lawyers, there's every walk of life. I mean, like you said, addiction is not subjective. Addiction is a cruel, cruel, cruel disease that will take anybody who allows it into their system. I strongly believe that every alcoholic or addict has a level of mental health issue to deal with. Not every person with mental health is an addict or an alcoholic, but I do believe that we all share something as addicts and alcoholics, and there's something bigger going on with us that's leading us to this pattern of behavior, to this safe place, alcohol and drugs. There's something else going on with us. The alcoholism and the addiction is just a symptom of something much, much bigger. And that once we can get to the point where we no longer ignore that there's something going on that we can't control, then we start to heal, and AA is a great place to do that because, once you get past the first 2 or 3 meetings and you start to get to know people, then now when I go to an AA meeting, 21 months later, I go because I miss my friends. I don't go because I need to go. I don't go because I need a meeting. I go because I want to be there, because I know what they've done for me. And I know that they got me through the hardest part of my early recovery.
Yeah, and I say this a lot, but it felt like work in the beginning when I first got sober. Like it was strenuous for me to go to a 12-step meeting. It just was. It felt like it was something I had to do. And just like you were talking about, it became something that I enjoyed doing. All of a sudden, this thing that I didn't like to do in the beginning, I was seeing friends, felt a part of. And it's cool how it changes like that. How eventually some of the things that we have to do to stay sober, we start to actually enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, we're some of the most judgmental people on the planet, right? Like, we judge everybody. We judge the guy sitting to the left and the right of us. We judge ourselves. We judge everyone around us, because we're so, for me, I was so ashamed of what I was doing. I had to blame it on somebody else. And like I said, I'm not like a diehard AA guy. Like, I love AA. I did my 12 steps, and it was work. But I also bucked the system a little bit. Like, there's a way that they want you to do everything. There's a way they want you to do your step forward. There's a way they want you to do this. There's a way you want to, like there's a big plan. And, one of the biggest phrases I remember from AA is suggested plan of recovery. And to me, what that means is these steps are suggested that if you do these in one way or another, you will have a better life than you did when you didn't do these steps. So doing the 12 steps helped me learn more about myself and what I actually felt about who I was, not what other people felt, but what I felt about myself. And that gave me the ability to start to redress and work on the things that I didn't like about my own character. And that wouldn't have happened without AA. There's no doubt in my mind that wouldn't have happened without AA.
Yeah, it's the same way for me. It helped me. My life improved. It just did. And for me, it was a place where I had run out of answers. I had run out of ideas, ways that I could stop drinking, stop using, and live a better life. I tried everything, and it wasn't working. I want to go into the podcast, man. How did you come up with the idea? How did you get started with that?
Well, it's pretty simple. I came home from rehab in July of 2023, and one of my best friends, Kenny Finnegan, was one of my hugest supporters while I was getting sober. I had started a text thread when I went to treatment to like my 5 or 6 closest friends and my sister saying, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be gone for a while. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. I'm in rehab." So they kept that going while I was in treatment. And Kenny was a big proponent of that. So when I came home, me and Kenny were talking like every day because he was like my work wife. Like I would call him to bitch and piss and moan about everything that was going on in my life. Um, and we started talking about doing something. Like we both suffered from mental health issues, and we both had an addiction. His was gambling. You know, so we were like, what can we do to give back and try to help other people and to help ourselves at the same time? And literally that was like the conversation, like, because I was in such a place where I felt so great about myself and where I was in life that I just wanted to do something productive, like whether it was become a counselor or become a personal trainer. It didn't matter. I needed to do something. And Kenny and I were talking about it, and this was October of 2023. And we're sitting there and he's like, dude, we should do a podcast. Like, they're big. I'm like, dude, are you stupid? Excuse me. Like, why would I do a podcast? I'm an idiot. And I don't like to talk about my shit in public. And he's like, well, you said you wanted to do something big. Let's do something big. So we went back and forth about it. And then finally he's like, dude, just do the podcast. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do a podcast. And then I started doing all the background and the legwork, trying to find equipment and whatever I needed, and, doing my, podcast for dummies 101. And, finally we got everything up and running, and, Kenny was my co-creator, and unfortunately he died in a motorcycle accident on June 1st of 2024. So, that's what this is for right here. Loving memory of Finn. So he never really got to be as big a part of the production as he wanted to be. We actually did an episode with him almost a month to the day before he died. And that was the last time I saw him. And so now it's, no matter how I feel, no matter what's going on in my life, like the round table is a driving force for me. Our goal is to provide a platform for the underdog, for people to talk about whatever's on their mind and to talk about their struggles and their successes and their fight to find redemption. And we're not purely alcoholics and addicts and mental health, but that is a huge part for me. Now I have a partner. Her name is Natalie Snyder, who is a criminal defense attorney. So it's like devil versus devil, cop versus attorney. But, all we want to do is provide a safe platform for clean lines of communication and people to open up and talk about whatever's on their mind, and to know that they deserve to be heard. Everybody's story deserves to be heard, and that's what we're doing. And thanks to Kenny, that's how that's what we came up with, and that's where we're at, and we're going to keep going forward with it as long as we can.
That's cool, man. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. I love that story. I love that he was someone who motivated you to get going on it. It's super cool to hear. I want to ask, how do you balance everything nowadays? Staying sober. I know you work a bunch. You got the podcast stuff going on. I know you talked about working out, making sure your mental health is good. What's the key for you to kind of making sure that that everything's kind of balanced and you're in a good groove?
That's a really good question, because I'm still trying to figure it out. Honestly, I'm still trying to find a happy medium of how to do everything. I'm a workaholic. I work 60, 65 hours a week. Then I have 2 dogs. I have an amazing girlfriend. And then I have my outside work responsibilities. So it is very tough. During the week, I don't do much of anything. It's go to work, go to the gym when I can, get sleep. And I'll be honest with you, like during the week is not usually when I have any issues thinking about drinking. It's on the weekends when I'm on my off time and, I don't have to worry about work. That becomes a little more difficult at times, but it really comes down to, knowing that 5 days a week work is my priority. And then on the weekends, I need to put faith in my support network, and use them when I'm having, stressful days. And, just remembering that if I don't maintain my sobriety, none of the things I have and none of the things I do now are going to be available to me, because I can't do this podcast if I'm a drunk, because I'm a hypocrite. I won't do that. I can't go to work if I'm a drunk, because I would put people at risk. I'm a truck driver, like I'm done doing that stuff. So for me, the biggest element of balance is just knowing where my responsibilities lie and then doing the best I can every day to meet my responsibilities.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Thank you for that answer. And I'm going to ask you too. Is it hard nowadays? You've been sober for a little bit. Excuse me. Is it hard to see people drinking still?
Um, that's like a catch-22 question. Um, Not usually. Usually it doesn't bother me at all. I have a couple friends that we always used to have Sunday fun day, where we drink all day, drink all night, wake up in the morning, start drinking again, and just party for like 2 days straight. Um, it's sometimes difficult to be around them because it brings back the good memories of when I was drinking, not the bad. When I see somebody drinking at the bar, it's just like, yeah, I don't want to do that because I remember what it does to me. But when I see them drinking, it's like, God, I miss that time we did this. You remember when we did this? Remember when, I choked you out in your living room at like 6 o'clock in the morning? You know, um, I miss that stuff. But in general, it sounds like bullshit, but I really don't think about drinking very often. It's usually when, um, it's when you're at wit's end and you get stressed out. That's when it usually comes up. I mean, but yeah, it doesn't really bother me to see other people drink. Like my girlfriend one night was out. She's like, "Can I have a glass of wine?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like I'm not there. Like do whatever you want. You know. I just won't keep alcohol in my house ever. Because I don't. You know, it's so easy to fall if you give yourself the opportunity. So alcohol just isn't in my house.
Yeah. Excuse me. When you're talking about it's the same thing for me. And I think maybe a lot of us deal with that. It's when I'm around old friends that I used to drink with, my head, it's so funny because I could suffer for years and my life could just go to ruin because of alcohol and drugs. Yet when I'm around old friends that I used to have a lot of fun with, that's all I'm going to think about. All I'm going to picture
Yeah.
is the great time.
Yep. And there was so many. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's probably thousands of amazing moments that I've had with my friends, but no thousand good moments is worth eating a bullet.
No.
And that's where I was personally, that's where I was. Like I was just done. I didn't give a shit anymore. I just didn't care. I didn't want to be alive anymore, So I think that's one of the biggest things for me moving forward is that anytime I do think, even the thought of drinking, like even going, hey, it would be nice to have a beer today. I don't want one, but it would be nice to have one. Then I'm like, yeah, that one will end with you dead. So don't touch it, and a lot of people in AA are like, well, you can't think that way. I'm like, well, I have to think about that way. It is day by day. But for me, it's that one image, remembering all that crap makes me never want to touch this stuff again because like I'm literally like, it was me passing out or me killing myself. And I don't want to gamble on that more than once in my lifetime because I don't think the odds will turn out the same way.
Yeah, and it's so crazy to think about because it's I forget who says it, but they talk about seconds and inches. Basically, those moments in our life where we are so close to something bad happening, and then we turn the corner. We're at that fork in the road. Do you think about that sometimes? Does it just hit you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to think about it sometimes, like it's not like I was only an alcoholic for a day. Like it was a lifetime of drinking. So my entire life is linked to alcohol in some way, shape, or another. All my good friends I met drinking, you know, like my girlfriend now is the only girl I've ever met where I was sober. So, it's tough. It's tough to, it's tough to let the thoughts in, like you don't want to sit there and go, hey, listen, I got to make that choice again today. Like, because we're making that choice every day. We're choosing that road every day. As a recovering addict or recovering alcoholic, you are choosing to take the scary, less known road with all the scary people on it and the frightening things that you don't know about instead of the path that we know that we have chosen repeatedly, which because we do because of comfort level. So, facing that decision isn't just a once in a lifetime thing. It's an everyday thing, and I think that in the beginning, we're scared of it. We're very scared of it. But like they say in AA, miracles happen. And before you're halfway through, things are going to change. And, it gets easier and easier and easier to choose the right path. And that ugly road that we were on before just kind of fades to the black. But I always say, the road to our future is paved by the ashes of our past.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. Yeah, and as you were talking about just constantly remembering how bad it was. Like when we're thinking in our head, hey man, remember we had fun that one time with these friends, constantly remembering what it was like at the end. That's, I think for me personally, that's one of the most valuable things I have stored in my memory as an addict alcoholic is just how bad it was. And just remembering that, feeling it, and knowing that, look, man, if I take a drink, it's not going to be that fun time like it was in the beginning. It's going to be hell,
Yeah, I mean, like I could go out and have a drink tomorrow, and the first one's going to be great, and the second one's going to be great, and I might go a month, I may go 2 months, I may go a week, but at some point, the addiction will take over. Because for me, what the addiction was my brain taking a back seat and my body running the show. Because I had taught my body over years and years and years and years that any time I was stressed out, I would drink and it would go away. So that natural reaction is going to manifest itself again at some point. I don't care how long I've been sober. It's just I'm never going to be able to control this. I'm never going to have a handle on the alcoholism. The best action for me is to continue to question myself when I'm having a bad day and question myself when I'm having a good day and questioning myself about every little choice I make to make sure that it's a healthy choice for me and to make sure that I'm continuing to make my friends proud and make Kenny proud of me, because if I drank now, he would turn over in his grave. So, a big motivating factor is the past, but it's also the present, because if we don't live in today, we don't stay sober.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit too, and this has to do with the past. I had a hard time when I first got sober. I would replay all of the years that I spent in addiction and kind of my failures and mistakes, and I'd relive the relationships I ruined and all that stuff. And I eventually had to get to a point where I forgave myself. I realized, look, I was sick. How did you kind of let go of that past? How did you continue to move forward?
In AA, there's a step where we make amends, correct? Like we have to make amends, but there's one thing in there that we always forget. We can't allow anybody to forgive us if we don't forgive ourselves. We have to at some point at least understand that we're sick. Excuse me. And that we didn't want to act the way we acted. We didn't want to do the things that we did. So, for me, it was in treatment. It was literally in that 5-week period where I was away, where I had to face myself on a daily basis and the things that I had done, and start to at least open the door to forgive myself. I haven't completely forgiven myself for a lot of the things that I've done. But if we don't forgive ourselves, we're never going to let anybody else forgive us. We're never going to let anybody else forget. We're never going to live a sober and happy life. And that's the key, is the happy part. We're never going to be happy until we resolve our issues with ourselves. And whether that's complete forgiveness or understanding, we don't have to forgive ourselves. We just have to understand that, we're sick. We made a lot of mistakes. We hurt a lot of people. And moving forward, we need to always remember that, but we don't have to punish ourselves moving forward to be a good person. We have to take the step to be a good person so that we can continue to forgive ourselves. Because once we melt down and do something stupid again, it's all going to come back.
Yeah, I want to ask you, man, I want to backtrack a little bit. I remember on your show notes, it said that you were in Brooklyn on 9/11, man. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was kind of going through a period of my life where I was a transient, just kind of moving around a little bit. and I was working for a bowling alley remodeling company. So we would go into bowling alleys and we would remodel the entire place, like the lanes, the chairs, the computers, whatever. So we were doing a job in Brooklyn, which is about 6 miles from Ground Zero. And we had gotten there in the morning of 9/11 and we were setting up our equipment. And this bowling alley had like, I don't know, 350 people in it at like, 6 o'clock in the morning because they had all these morning leagues. And then we were setting up all our equipment because we had just gotten there. We drove from Pittsburgh to Brooklyn overnight and then started working right away. We started working and somebody comes out and yells, "Hey, a plane just hit the tower." And we're like, "Oh, it sounds like some idiot, was in a Cessna, private plane and decided to go the wrong way and just bounced off the tower. No big deal, right?" So we all went inside and then they start showing the video and they start talking about what's actually going on. And, watching that happen, we watched it all on TV right there. And then when we would go outside, you saw it. I mean, you saw the smoke in the air. You saw the shimmering glass and metal that was floating through the air. There's everybody in that building that I was working in, everybody in that bowling alley was just losing it because they either knew somebody that worked in the towers or they had family that worked in the towers or they had a friend that knew somebody that worked in the towers. Like that employed a lot of people. I mean, so there's people just melting down all around us, and losing their shit. And we're just these out of town guys. Like, we don't know what to do. We're sitting there and all these people are having this horrible moment. And granted, it was a horrible moment for everybody because it was nationally a horrible moment, but watching these people suffer, knowing that their loved ones are dead and dying and jumping out of a building, to avoid catching on fire. Like it's surreal. And I came home from that and, I was messed up. I'm not gonna lie. I was screwed up for a while, cause I couldn't do anything, and my opinion of myself was that you didn't do anything to help anybody and you were there. Like what was your, what do you have to be happy about? What do you have to be like cool with yourself about? And once again, my treatment center, doing EMDR and ART therapy, I finally was able to work through that a little bit, to the point where I understand that I couldn't do much more, survivor's guilt again, all these people. And, one of the really weird things was we were walking from the bowling alley we were working into our hotel, and it was me and my buddy Jim. And while we're walking, this piece of paper comes floating down and lands on the ground, and it was burnt all around the edges, and it was a picture of the eagle with the wheat and the arrows.
Wow.
And he picked that up and kept that, and he's got that at his place now. But like, it was just so surreal. And then we went to, of course, I was a drinker back then, so we went to a local pub, and we were just getting wrecked with these New Yorkers who are the coolest people ever because they were just like treating us like we were their family. And I always like to say that, New Yorkers are tough for a reason, but they're also probably some of the most loving people, because they accepted us like we were part of their family for that day. And I'm so grateful that I'm grateful that I got to be around those folks. I just wish it wasn't in the way that it happened. It's still to this day, it's probably one of the biggest tragedies we've ever seen.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I remember watching on TV when the second plane hit, and as you're telling your story, I'm imagining, you're at the bowling alley and you think that, yeah, someone had a small plane that crashed into the building. Some, like you said, some idiot who didn't know where he was going or whatever messed up somehow. That's crazy, man. Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to ask you. I got a couple more questions. I know I've had you on here
we're good.
for a while. I just want to kind of ask, what's next for you? What are the goals for the podcast? What do you plan on doing here in the near future? I know you got the website that's almost up, right?
Yeah, we're going to have a website. It's going to be steelcityroundtablepodcast.com. We're going to put that up on I think we're going to put it up the 1st of February. Yeah, 1st of February, it's going up. Still finishing the finishing touches on that. My now permanent host, Natalie Snyder, criminal defense attorney Natalie Snyder, is, actually coming over here when we get done. We're going to film an episode today. But the goal of the podcast now is we're going to kind of reformat a little bit. We've been in the process of trying to really reach out to the people that we want to get a hold of. And once again, it's a platform for the underdog. It's a platform for people to talk about their stories of struggles and success, and literally to talk about whatever you need to get off your chest. So, we're on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, a bunch of other social media. And really right now, we're just trying to get the word out there and let people know that you're never alone, and that there's always help if you're willing to reach for it. And, hopefully do some more collaborations with some people that I've met through Instagram. I think really at this point, we're going to put things into full gear and try to really reach as many people as we can, and collaborate with folks like you and Sean Livingston of the I Am Redemption podcast. And then, you got the Two Addicts and a Moron. I'm looking to collaborate with them. So yeah, right now it's just reaching out to people and seeing who wants to do stuff together and try to help each other out and help each other get the word out there that, life is great once you kick the addiction.
That's the thing. It seems like such a nightmare when you realize, oh man, I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic. You think, at least for me, I thought my life was over, and
Yeah, me
come
too.
to find, and I started to heal a little bit, and I started to feel better, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I actually enjoy being sober. Like, who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing when you can wake up in the morning and not regret where you were or what you did, and remember everything you did. I'm living my best life as a almost 51-year-old recovering alcoholic with mental health issues, which, for all intended purposes, should have been a death sentence before. But now I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I went through this journey. I'm grateful that I had to suffer and torture myself into being a good person again.
And I think that's kind of, I think addiction or alcoholism is kind of a blessing and a curse. I think it's a curse when we are still drinking or using. But what you just said, I think it becomes a blessing once we get sober, because life was so shitty battling the drugs and the alcohol and you go through so many rough things, painful experiences, that when you finally get sober, I feel like there's a certain gratitude or just love for life, or you're just thankful once you get sober because of the stuff that we went through. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a peaceful existence. You shut all the noise out. I no longer have all the demons in my head. Like, I still have problems. I'm not healed 100%, but now the voices are controllable. Like, when I have a bad day, I have a plan to attack it. It's take a deep breath. Ask yourself if you can do anything. Is it going to hurt you? No. Well, then suck it up and get through it. Before, it was right to the bottle and then suffer even more. So I think once for me, it was being diagnosed with mental health issues is honestly what made the possibility of me sober happen. If I wouldn't have been diagnosed with mental health, I don't think I would be sober, because I would not have had I'm a question and answer guy. I'm a black and white guy. I need to have things drawn out for me because I'm kind of a big dummy. So I needed someone to tell me what was wrong with me. And by finding out I had a mental health diagnosis, I was like, oh, okay, so I have something that I can pinpoint and then I can take steps to attack and deal with. And then that hopefully will lead me somewhere else, into a better place. And that's exactly what happened. I started attacking my mental health issues. I started taking better care of myself. And as I've done that, the sobriety thing has become much easier, because I don't have all the issues. I don't have all the problems that I manifested for myself because of the alcohol. Like I said before, for me, alcoholism addiction is a symptom of something much, much deeper that's going on, that we need to find out what it is in order to be healthy.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you, dude. I look forward to collaborating with you. I
Oh yeah,
can't wait
brother.
can't wait to see the website. I can't wait to see all the new episodes. I appreciate you coming on here. One of the questions I kind of ask people normally towards the end is, what would your advice be to someone that has mental health stuff going on and also addiction stuff going on, and they don't know what to do? They know they're in a lot of pain. They know they're having issues with their life. They know they're not getting the results that they want out of life. what would your advice be to them? Someone just starting the sober journey, so to speak.
Get out of your own way. I mean, honestly, we all think that, we can do everything on our own. And addiction, mental health is not something you can beat on your own. You need to reach out for help. You need to trust the people that are in your life because they're there because they love you. And if they're not, then dump them. If they don't make you better as a person, then get rid of them. I think if you focus on those couple things of, reaching out for help and not being afraid to let your guard down long enough to communicate and get what's on your mind out there. A burden unshared is a burden doubled. If you don't get it off your chest, it's just going to get worse. So I think just get out of your own way. We can't do it on our own. That's about it. Honestly, like I'm still figuring it out on my own, but I know I got to get out of my own way on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I'm still figuring out, and that's something that I've realized about this whole journey is I'm never gonna have it all figured out. We're all just trying to get by today, do our best, improve our
Yeah.
life, help others, spread hope.
Yeah, I think if we don't talk, if we don't communicate, like it's the easiest thing to open your mouth and say something, but it's the hardest thing to open your mouth and say something that truly affects you. So if someone can, reach out to a friend, reach out to a coworker, reach out to a family member and say, hey, listen, I'm struggling. Like, I need you. If they are who you think they are, if they are your friends and your family and your loved ones, they're going to be there for you and they're going to help guide you and at least give you options, and then you have to make that choice. Like, do I want to continue down this path or do I want to take the chance of being a better person, being a healthy person? And I think the biggest problem for us is, admitting to ourselves that we can't do it on our own. That's the scariest moment. For me, like I said, it was horrible, but once we get to that point where, hey, I'm Mark, I'm an alcoholic. Like my life is unmanageable. I'm a mess. Like somebody please help me. True strength is asking for help. Being a coward is sitting there and doing the same shit over and over and over again, not doing anything about it. So I think if people reach out and, ask for help and communicate what's bothering them and trust in the relationships that you form throughout your life, I think that's a good starting point. At least it was for me. And then after that, it's, make the next best decision and do what you think is right, not what you think is cool.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I just want to thank you again. I appreciate you, man. We will be in touch. I look forward to collaborating. Thank you, brother.
100%. I appreciate you taking the time off on on Sunday afternoon to let me talk some shit and act like I know something.
No, I love it. Thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.
All right, you made it through another episode. Thanks again, and if you'd like to collaborate or come on the show, please email me at thesoberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great day.